Welcome to Driven, the Unscripted Success podcast, with your hosts, Mike Mannino and Nariman Hamden, bringing you insights and stories on achieving personal, professional, and financial success.
Hi, everybody. It's Michael Mannino, and welcome to Driven, Unscripted Success podcast. Today on the podcast, we're interviewing professionals who share their experience with you and their tips and tricks and how they got to where they're at today. And today we got Kevin Broyles from FisherBroyles. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Awesome. Better than I can imagine. Kevin is with the law firm. We interviewed his partner a little while ago, TJ, and he was nice enough to come on. And now Kevin's here. We kind of know what you do, but could you do me a favor and tell the audience a breakdown of how you got to where you're at today and what was the process and systems?
Sure. It's somewhat of a long path, but I started out doing nonprofit litigation in DC. I got laid off after 8 months. So that was the first great loss of a job that I had that propelled me to Atlanta, where I started doing commercial litigation. And then I got very frustrated with judges. And I also got the bug in the late 90s, the technology bug that everyone seemed to be getting. You remember those IPOs? And I decided I didn't want to be a litigator anymore. I wanted to do corporate transactions, specifically technology. So I moved to a technology firm, one of the largest 200 largest firms in the United States. And it just so happened that a guy named James Fisher moved to that same firm 1 week before I did. And we had similar brilliant plans. We were going to represent technology companies, go in-house, get stock options, and cash out millionaires. The problem was, if the roller coaster is going like that, we got on at the very tip and it started going down.
99, 98, 97?
Yeah, we started February-ish 2000.
Oh,
and
sorry.
VCs were throwing money at every idea. I don't know if you remember mothernature.com. I didn't represent them, but that was just a good example of what was going on back then. Everything that had .com in it, let's throw some money at it. And then things started slowly deflating. And then all of a sudden 9/11 happened and the bottom fell out. And so we were left to figure out what's next. And I did not want to go back to litigation. And so the firm told me, you either go to litigation or you leave the firm. And I said, I'll leave the firm. And so that was the second time. What's that?
Option B.
Yeah, option B.
Litigation or leave the firm. Option B.
I said, I'll take option B. I told them I wouldn't go back to litigation with my best friend. I was so disillusioned with judges and how they didn't follow the law and so forth. So I sat down with James and some other attorneys and said, what's next? If this train ride is over, what do we do next? And one of our in-house contacts said, why don't you start your own firm and get rid of all this ridiculous overhead that drives hourly rates up? And my first question was, if I did that, would you hire me? And he said, I would. And so when my date to depart was approaching, I went to a couple of other clients and said, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What do you think? And they said, we think it's a great idea. One of them actually had a stack of documents to review and went into the meeting hoping I was going to tell him something like that. And he said, I've been thinking about doing this myself and I've already been talking to someone, but you've been doing our work. So how much money do you want and when can you start? So I said, this is a positive first impression from trying to pitch my first client. So we started that about 24 years ago and a month and a half as we sit here today. And it's just, it's exploded. It's been phenomenal. James and I sat down and we said, let's figure out what we don't like about traditional law firms. And since we're starting from scratch, let's fix it. And that's what we did.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And it probably received real well. You cut the fat.
We did. We cut the fat. We cut the nonsense. We just felt like the practice of law could be fun in a large, sophisticated practice. And for a lot of attorneys, it's not fun. It's like a Marine boot camp mentally and physically, not as taxing, but if you don't mind 14 to 16 hour days, you can deal with it. But we just thought all that was nonsense. And I remember the old advertisement for California cheese. They said happier cows produce better cheese. So they were going after Wisconsin because it was so cold in Wisconsin. And I thought, you know what? Happier lawyers produce better work product. So let's make our law firm a better place to be for lawyers.
And clients.
And clients, yeah, we didn't leave the clients out. We sat down and said, what do we know about what clients hate about law firms? The first one we've already mentioned, which was the high, ever increasing legal rates. The other thing is we said we have these young attorneys that come out of law school with no experience and they're getting paid six figures, and the client's having to pay an hourly rate that's outrageous. It's not remotely associated with the value that they're bringing. And essentially, the client is paying to train the young attorneys. And we felt like that was a conflict of interest with our clients. And we said, clients shouldn't be paying to train lawyers. They ought to be paying for the work product they get that's efficient, sophisticated, at high level. And so we said, we're not going to bring on first and second year lawyers that are coming right out of law school and pay them 100. At the time, I guess it was about 115,000. Now it's well into the 200,000s when you first come out of law school. And that whole structure is old, outdated, inefficient, and going the way of the dinosaurs.
I'm sorry. I don't know if I'm sorry to hear that. It's awesome that it's going to go that way.
It's time for change.
I've learned that when you implement good changes, positive things come. And that's what happened to you guys.
Yeah, you have to have faith, believe in what you're doing. And sometimes you hit bumps along the way, but things tend to work out if you have a good plan, you treat people with honesty and professionalism, and you stay the course. And
Agreed.
That's what happened to us. And I don't think I co-founded this firm when I was 32 years old, 31 years old in the spring of 2002. I had no idea. A lot of these concepts I was shocked. James, if he was here, I always knew this would be really successful. I was shocked at how it grew so fast. We started out small, and pretty soon we had 9, and then we had 17, and then all of a sudden we had 30. And when we hit 100, we were like, my goodness, we're a large law firm now. And a few years ago, we were honored to be included in the American Lawyers ranking of the top firms in the country, and we appeared in the top 200 by revenue in the United States, which we're still the only distributed law firm that's ever accomplished that. So that was
Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo. Speaking of, you said road bumps. What is the biggest road bump you had? What is the biggest challenge you have? And what was your solution to fix it?
Early on, I think it was the credibility of starting out in a smaller firm. So we had to be very deliberate about who we brought on. They all had to have large law firm experience or U.S. government experience or large corporate experience. We wanted to go to clients and say, look, there's 2 gas stations. You're used to using this gas station across the street that you know is really good. You know the saying, no one's ever been fired for hiring IBM. That's what they were doing. So we had to basically convince them that it was the same gas being sold across the street at our firm. They said, wait a minute, your gas is 40% cheaper. How can it be? So that was the challenge to show them that it's not really the same gas, it's better gas. It's better service. Because you don't
and
just
cheaper, better and cheaper, better, faster,
exactly.
and cheaper.
I was going to say, you don't just pay a lower price, you get better service, more hands-on, more efficient. We had a lot of principles from the beginning, and one of the principles we always said was pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. And we didn't want to be hogs. So we viewed our client relationships as forever relationships. We weren't in it for the pound the file, get the big pay off, and then the client's upset and they never come back. We want the client coming back forever and going to a cocktail reception and telling all of their other in-house, whether they're lawyers or CEOs, going and telling them, you wouldn't believe. It's kind of like a great stock. If you get in a great stock, you want to tell everybody, oh, I got into this stock. Or you find a great restaurant. So we wanted him to be saying, I found this great law firm. They're amazing. They're very innovative. I was actually having lunch with a prospective client one time, and one of the CEO of my second client walked by the table and he just said, "Oh my goodness, this is the best lawyer you'll ever have." And it almost seemed like I had paid him to show up and say that. And I didn't even know he was going to be there, but that's what we were shooting for, that kind of reaction where years later they'd say, "Man," kind of like a mechanic. "I used to have this great mechanic and he stopped working," which I hate, but we're still here. So we want to be thought of in the same way.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. If you take care of your customers, I teach some people how to run construction businesses, and they said, "What do I got to do?" I said, "Just take care of the customer." That's really all you have to do. There's not
Absolutely.
much more to it. But what you're doing is better, faster, and easier and cheaper. I
Oh,
had one experience with an attorney. It was the worst experience I've ever had in my life. And the guy was a friend of mine from high school.
mhm.
It was horrible.
And
It was,
I've had bad experiences with attorneys too, where you
I
just
could
shake
only
your head.
imagine, but you're an
Yeah.
attorney. What do you mean you had
Yeah.
a give me, for instance, what was your bad experience with an attorney?
I had a real estate dispute, and it just so happened that my position was rock solid. In fact, there was a United States Supreme Court case that was almost identical facts. And you can practice law for 50 years and never run into a case that says this is directly on point. And not only that, it was the United States Supreme Court. Scalia had written the
So
decision.
that's the last one, right? You can go all the courts, local, national, regional, state, and then you got the
Yeah,
United States.
that's the highest one. So there is no,
There is no higher.
arguing about their decision. So I hired this lawyer that was local, and I said, and he's the one that told me about the case, which I thought, wow, this
You
guy.
had to hire a lawyer because you're a lawyer. I was like, why can't you defend yourself? You can't.
It was a Florida issue. I'm a Georgia
Oh,
lawyer, and this guy's
gotcha.
expertise was down there in real estate. And so he told me, I got on the phone with him, and immediately he said, "Oh, you're in luck. Based on your facts, there's this Supreme Court case that was just decided 5 years ago, and Scalia wrote the opinion, and it was like 9-0, and you win, and blah blah blah." And I said, "Oh, that's great. Call the other side. Tell them they're going to immediately do X, Y, and Z, and if they don't, we're going to file a federal lawsuit, cite this case, and we're going to win. It's going to be they're
Slam
wasting
dunk.
time." So this guy ended up getting one of his associates to write a memo about whether a federal court would have jurisdiction in the case. And it was one of those things that you learn the first year of law school. We all knew that the court had jurisdiction and then tried to charge me and my co-investors several $1,000s for this memo. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. We already discussed this. This isn't a $11,000 bill. This is a 1,100 at most, and we win. And I've had my own experiences where it just reinforced what we're doing. It's just that kind of nonsense. But what he was doing is he was following the traditional law firm model, which is you don't really make money unless you leverage really young associates and make your clients pay for that because that's what their profit center is. Large traditional firms, they'll bring these first years out of great law schools, and of course, they're in debt, incredible debt, and they'll pay them over $200,000, and then they'll bill them out such that the firm's collecting $1 million on what they do. So that's the profit center, and he was following that model. And that's an example of what James and I didn't like about traditional law firms and said, we're going to change that. We're not going to have that conflict of interest where our clients have to pay for nonsense work just because we have a bad business model where we have to pay these young attorneys who know nothing $200,000 a year.
That I can't second that sentiment the most. That is amazing what you just said. My experience was with a friend of mine, and he sent his first year attorney with me, and he couldn't. We were in depositions, and then they were asking me questions, and he goes, "You got any questions? You might like this. I'll tell this one real quick. I was being sued by the union. It was a union dispute, and they had some high end attorneys on the other end of that table. Those unions got money. I hired my friend. He brought this first year student, and they asked all the questions. He goes, "You got any questions?" I go, and then my attorney goes, "No, no questions." And
Yeah.
I was seethed a little bit, and I asked 3 questions. I said, "Why are you suing me?" And they said, "These 3 bills And I go, do you have a contract for those 3 bills? Because I billed and got paid on them. I didn't pay the union for those 3 bills. And they said, yeah, here's your contract. Does it have my signature on it? Right here, page 2. Okay, do me a favor, go to page 4, paragraph 3, and read that for the courts. This contract is between Michael, or contractor, and local 1234 residential carpenters union. Does not apply to commercial buildings, restaurants, or things. Do me a favor and read the receipts to the bills that you're suing me for. Devil's Ridge Golf Course. I go, and banquet facility, which would be considered a restaurant. To be considered commercial, which is not residential, which does not apply to this. And they said, my attorney just sat there. I'm the carpenter trying to figure this one out. It blew my mind.
Because look, I didn't know anything either when I got to law school. None of us do. I once, as a litigator, I was told to send correspondence by this older, more experienced attorney to the clerk. I'd never done any kind of clinical or anything. There's really 2 clerks. There's the judge's clerk, and then there's the clerk of court where you file things. I sent it to the judge's clerk. And he meant, this is a filing, you send it. So the judge's clerk forwarded it to the clerk of court and said, and then reached out to the attorney of record, who was my superior, and said, I don't know why you sent this here. And I was probably 3 months out of law school. I had no idea. And the guy he assumed, he actually ended up calling me and said something like, how could you be so stupid or something?
Oh, dude, I could imagine. I could only imagine. And I like what you guys did. I really do. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys don't have offices. You guys are more.
Yeah, we don't have fixed offices. We have variable office space, which is by the drink. But we also give a great deal of autonomy to our partners. So if they want to get their own office, they can do that. Some people feel like they have to work in an office.
Do they take that up? What percent of your guys take that up? Guys and girls, I shouldn't say that.
Let's see, probably 3%.
Yeah,
maybe
so
4%.
That's one of the savings is the real estate, the office space. You're saving money, passing that on to the clients.
And you asked me earlier what some of those road bumps that we hit. One was always trying to convince lawyers who'd always worked in an office that they can work somewhere else, and to convince clients. They were always concerned their clients would be worried about that. We had this little thing that happened in 2020 that fixed all of that for us.
So if there was questions, it was all fixed in 2020.
Yeah, in fact, it's even better because no one wanted to go back to the office. The attorneys were like, why would I live in White Plains, New York. Why do I want to commute to Manhattan? And it was a nice little recruiting bump for us. And we never, to this day, in the last, 6 years, I have never had to answer the question again about how it is working from home or try to convince someone that it's possible. And they never mention their clients care anymore because the clients were working remote as well. And one thing we knew from the very beginning, clients care about the results. They want quality legal work. They don't care that you don't know where I'm sitting. Look at my background. You have no idea where I am right now.
You're in Georgia.
I am somewhere in Georgia.
You're somewhere in Georgia. I'm not going to give away the actual.
Yeah, if I showed you the weather outside, you are in Georgia. The rain that we've been getting, but
dude, I've been getting. This is part of the podcast, but it's been raining and will be raining last week and this week.
But we needed
where
that.
We're at.
They say April showers.
We did.
April showers bring May flowers, but we didn't have any April showers. So
no, my grass is half dead.
Yeah.
What is one of the greatest lessons you've learned in your career and life and you'd like to pass on?
Everyone projects, and you have to catch yourself from projecting. And what I mean by that is we tend to assume that people's ethic, character, the way they do things is the same as we do it. That's a big mistake. That is a big mistake. I learned that pretty early on as a litigator in my 20s when I had a case between a father and a son, and the father had retired from a company that he had handed down to his son. And the son he was our client. He was a great guy, just salt of the earth kind of guy. But the father didn't trust him. And they had a business dispute because the father just assumed the son was going to stab him in the back and not take care of him in his retirement. And I realized the reason that the father was doing that is because that's the way he treats people. He was the kind of person who just you wouldn't want to be around, you wouldn't want to do business with. He was just assuming the son was going to handle things the way he would, which is kill the king or take over the kingdom kind of thing. And
there's something to that. There's something to this. A lot of people don't trust the passing of the baton.
But it works in the opposite way as well. If you have a high degree of integrity and professionalism, you cannot assume everyone else has the same. And if you do, you'll run into problems. And that's one of the problems I've had. And you can call it naive if you like, but James and I have always had this idea from the very beginning that we follow the golden rule. We treat people the way that we would like to be treated. And you can do that with people, but you have to be cautious. Reagan used to say, trust but verify. I think you can trust people, but you better be ready to verify.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. We're in a business where you take on a lot of partners. Real estate syndication, you know what that is, right?
Yep.
You do a lot of that, right? Your firm does that.
Yeah,
your firm does. And it's just getting a bunch of people together to do something greater than they can do by themselves, right? And it's a lot of fun. It's really cool. And I've been blessed. I haven't had a partner that I've wanted to get out of the partnership, but I've heard some people that have, and it's tough.
Yeah.
They promise something and can't do it, and it's tough for them.
Yeah, so that's been a challenge.
Speaking of that, syndication, sounds like things are going well for you. Thinking about the future, I'm curious if you've ever considered or made ways to create passive income. Something where you make money where you're not doing too much work yet.
I do a lot of real estate. Actually, this firm is like that, to be honest, because every time we add a recruit, we'll make a little bit more money. And we're giving them the opportunity to build their own practice within a large law firm practice. And so if I can recruit someone today, as long as they're sticking around, I'm making money from that one recruiting event. I'm making money going forward, and we're making money together. And I still have to manage. We basically, as the managers of the firm, we serve the attorneys. Some people incorrectly say they work for me. They don't work for me. I really work for them. But that's one way to do passive income. I have some rental properties as well, primarily in Tennessee, that I use. I found out I'm not a very good investor. One thing that I think is very powerful as an entrepreneur, as an investor, really in any walk of life, is to follow Clint Eastwood's advice. A man's got to know his limitations. We figured out early on, we don't know. As lawyers, it's unusual. They think they know everything. Doctors are probably even worse. But James and I figured out early on, we don't know everything, and we're not ashamed to say we don't know everything. So we rely on people who are experts at what they do, including people within our firm. So I can never say that we are somehow solely responsible for what has happened. We've got a lot of great lawyers and great executives and administrative staff that have made this firm as successful as it has been and will continue to do so. It's a matter of understanding when to let go of the reins and let people who know far better than you do take control and implement things, whether it's in private investing or running your business.
I agree wholeheartedly. I don't know about law. That's why I would hire you. And I know about private investing more than most. And I only know 5 things. 5 things: martial arts, being married, raising kids, multifamily, and building. And that's it. You're not going to hear me talk about anything ever other than those 5 things.
That's a great attitude, because we have too many people these days think they know everything.
Great. Let them, God love them if they do. I just know 5 things. And when I teach, I only teach on those 5. You'll never hear me teaching about law. You'll never hear me teaching about anything else. Medical. I understand how to hurt the human body as a martial artist, but I don't know how to fix the human body at all, period. So you're not going to hear advice from me on any of that stuff. And that's what I think. I think Tony Robbins said it best. He goes, you only need to know 4 or 5 things. That's all you need to know. Be good at those 4 or 5 things. You don't need to be good at everything.
And you really can't. I can't think of anyone.
You can't.
Bravo, Kevin. Take Elon Musk. He's doing 3 or 4 or 5 things. He's really good, but not even he can probably do 10 things really good.
He's a phenom. There's just Joe Rogan said it best. He goes, "You're an alien, and you're dealing with chimpanzees." But with that said, he really only is a businessman. In his business, he knows computers and he knows automobiles, and that's really about it. Now he's learning about space and all that other kind of stuff too. It's really cool to watch.
He's drilling underground. I know in Nashville, he's got his boring company that's creating this pathway to the airport from downtown, and it's not the only city he's doing that. So he got his hands in a lot of different things, but not a lot, a handful is what we discussed.
Right.
He got his hands on a handful of things. He's not trying to own a professional football team. He could probably own all of them, but
you can afford it. But here's the genius of Elon Musk, and this will be a great sniglet on this podcast. Elon Musk, if you think about it, he's a beyond long-term thinker. Why does he have an electric car company? Why does he have a solar company? Why does he have a boring company? Why does he have a space company? And everybody goes, "Oh, he just likes those things." His ultimate goal is to be multiplanetary. So you'll need a space company. You'll need SpaceX to communicate from here to Mars. You'll need to get there. You'll need to communicate. And the boring is to go under the ground, because then you can make you can make basically houses or living quarters underground where the atmosphere doesn't mess with you, right? And you get electric vehicles to run around and solar power to power the vehicles. The guy is brilliant, beyond brilliant.
And he's wanting to go into space because he's into AI, and AI needs energy, and he's going to harness the sun to provide that energy.
And the cooling.
Yeah.
And the cooling of it, because the cooling takes on data centers. We build buildings too, and the data centers take a lot of time, effort, and money on cooling the components. It's just really everybody understands the power. Yeah. They don't understand the power to cool it too.
And that ties back into what I was saying earlier. I was just having a discussion this morning about SpaceX and the IPO, and I analogized it to my alma mater in basketball. I said, I know something about basketball, but when it comes to most decisions, I'm going to trust the coach. He's a legendary coach, and that's the thing with Elon Musk. I know a little bit about this stuff, but I think I'm just going to go in the direction he's going.
I learned to bet on the winners. And everybody else says, I remember when the shorts were betting against Tesla to fail. I'm like, it's not a great bet there. You're betting against a very intelligent guy. That's not a great idea. And it didn't work out well for them. Hey, listen, Kevin, I can't thank you enough for being on the podcast. Sure. What do you got exciting plan coming up for the next 6 to 12 months of your firm?
It's all about AI, really. It's growth in AI. Yeah. We've got the great thing about how we're positioned, because we don't have those young attorneys, AI is going to make us even more competitive vis-a-vis the traditional law firms. Because as I mentioned earlier, their entire economic structure is built on leveraging those young attorneys, and those are the ones that AI is going to displace immediately. So
you think so?
Oh yeah. Anyone. I told one of my partners who's a PhD, brilliant. I said, you need to figure out what you do best that AI could never do, and focus on that, and use AI to replace everything else. And
that's some true words there. That was really good information.
And if you think about the practice of law, the more commoditized services are those first and second years that are pouring out of law schools. You can get one from Michigan, you can get one from Duke, you can get one from Harvard. They're all the same in the first and second year. It's when they get the wisdom and experience that they become invaluable. So AI is not going to displace all lawyers, but I would not want to be, I tell everyone who comes along, don't go to law school. Not today.
Really?
Yeah. And I say that my son just graduated from law school, but he's going to be an assistant district attorney. So I said, you may have chosen the only path that AI is not going to displace anytime soon, because we're not going to have people's freedom subject to a computer making any decisions. But if you're talking about the memo that I mentioned that first year wrote that I was so unhappy with, AI is going to write that memo within 10 minutes or less, probably like 3 minutes.
Yeah, but that just makes the attorney's job easier.
It does. But again, those firms are dependent upon those clients paying an exorbitant rate for those young lawyers. That's their leverage. So take that profit center, which is by far their greatest profit, and remove it. How does the firm make money? How do they pay for that Manhattan real estate? How do they pay those partners?
Oh, the Manhattan real estate.
Yeah.
That's just a burden. That's an albatross across their neck.
Yeah. How do they pay for those senior partners who've paid their dues and now want theirs? because that profit's not there anymore. And clients are going to put up with it. Clients have already been pushing back for the last 15 to 25 years on using young lawyers because they know it doesn't add value. So if you look at what DuPont did many years ago, they changed that whole landscape and said, we're no longer going to pay for your first, second, third year lawyers. We're no longer going to pay for this. They basically went to their outside counsel and said, you got to follow these guidelines. So they were already pushing back on that. AI is going to be that approach on steroids because clients are smart. They're going to say, are you using AI? Okay, so how much do I get of a discount on my legal bill? Because I know AI. I know it's not taking you 4 hours to do that anymore. It's taking you an hour.
Writing rebuttal is going to be a lot less than.
Yeah, you can. And we use AI. We're aggressively going after the right solutions. We're thinking about it daily. I probably get the last 2 weeks, I've gotten probably 17 texts from James Fisher about some AI. Check out this, check out that. Going back and forth, just thinking about it. And I think the legal industry, the accounting industry, they're in trouble if they do things the old way.
Yes.
So you've got to adapt. And the answer, I was reading a book about AI, and the author said he talked to a lawyer at a large firm in New York. And he said, we're no longer going to charge clients for first, second, or third year fees and work that they do. We're going to use AI and I'm going to raise my rate. That's not the answer. The client doesn't want to hear, oh, I've saved money with AI, but now you're going to pay me more. So you're still the same person. I'm not paying you more.
Yeah, that's the truth. Everything's I've learned over the years that everything's going to get cheaper when things be as time goes on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything gets cheaper as time goes on. There was a procedure for a machine that I forgot what it was for a doctor's office, and it was like 30 grand. And then in 10 years, it was like 1,500. Just
Well, and
because.
it's exciting because AI is a genius. Obviously,
Yes.
it makes mistakes, but it's exciting for medical advancements in particular. AI is going to
Yes.
solve issues that researchers have been trying for years to find the answers to. And
Yep.
again, going back to Elon Musk, he talks about AI and he kind of presents a socialist utopia in the future, and he's right to identify the problem. If 40% of people lose their jobs, then how do they survive? And
He mentioned it. He said there will have to be universal income. And here, I got a question for you. You're a highly intelligent individual. I've been thinking about robots for 40 years, and I've been studying them for 40 years. I don't speak on it because I don't know enough about it to have the conversation. And I knew, and tell me if I'm wrong or not, that eventually labor will be taken over by robots. Once we get a robot that can do a human task, then it can do any human task, right? So eventually, building enough robots, we won't need to do anything, and that will be the utopia. Will there be a need for money? Will there be a financial? Think about it. If robots are building robots and they're making the material to build the robots, designing the robots, we're not needed. Is the food's going to be farmed by robots, brought to the stores and taken care of by all robots, cleaning the store, everything's going to be taken care of. Will we need our financial, not our institutions, our financial, what is the word I'm looking for? Our financial system.
that's a great question. I think human beings still want more. So the question is someone who's used to their home in Nantucket and this, that, and the other, are they going to accept that they get what everyone else gets? I guess you get to keep your real estate, but if there's no need for money, how do you invest? How do you make more? How do you pass on
You
your
won't,
wealth? How do you?
here's the premise. You won't need it. So everybody has everything you need, want, and could desire. You can, and I'm getting a little bit too technical, and this is
Mhm.
going the wrong way. But replicators, if we can design a replicator and it can print everything, you can print money, you can print diamonds, you can print gold, you can make gold. You know what I mean? You can replicate it. So that would destroy the system. That would
Yeah.
destroy the system eventually because you can replicate replicators, and then there won't be a need for anything, and then you
But
get to do what you want to do.
someone's always going to offer a more luxurious experience, though, whether it's
That's
in an
true.
automobile or you're going on vacation. So, how do you compensate those people or those companies that are offering the upgraded version? I
Well,
mean,
then you'd have to labor for that. You don't have to work, but you do work to get the better things.
Yes, just use air travel as an example. There's a first class, there's a comfort, Delta Comfort Plus, and there's the coach. How do you get to first class? Do you
pay more?
You pay more, but how do you pay more if you don't have any money? Right?
That's the question. That is the question.
And listen, I don't have all those answers, but you could drive yourself a little crazy if you tried to sit down and think about all that.
We're just trying to think what the future looks like.
Yeah.
And I know it's good, but I don't know how good it's going to be.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be here for it for a very long time.
Awesome. Hey, Kevin, thanks a lot for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it. I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're going to let everybody go. Thank you for watching the podcast. Please subscribe for more content like this. And we appreciate everybody watching and listening. Kevin, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to Driven, the Unscripted Success Podcast. Want to share your story? Apply to be a guest at drivensuccesspodcast.com/guest.